Nonna Elena sat on a wrought iron bench in the center of the rose garden at the White House, her frail hands tearing tiny pieces of artisanal sourdough bread for the sparrows. She looked small in her lavender cashmere cardigan, a harmless relic of a softer era. 10 yards away, behind a thick hedge, 2 Secret Service agents were silently choking the life out of the Vice President's Chief of Staff. Nonna did not look up at the muffled struggle. She simply smiled at a bold little bird and whispered, "Eat up, my darling. You will need your strength for the migration," as the body went limp and was dragged into the shadows of the West Wing. If you value your life and want to be part of the family, subscribe now before the dawn finds you. The sound of the cane against the marble floor was rhythmic, a slow, inevitable ticking of a clock that signaled the end of someone's time. Click, drag, step, click, drag, step. The heavy mahogany doors of the penthouse suite, overlooking the glittering expanse of the Chicago skyline, swung open with a groan that sounded suspiciously like a warning. Nonna Elena walked into the room and found them cleaning the blood. The air was thick with the metallic tang of copper and the sharp chemical sting of industrial bleach, a cocktail of scents that had replaced the smell of Sunday gravy as the defining aroma of her life. 3 men, built like vending machines and wearing Italian suits that cost more than most people's college tuitions, were on their hands and knees. They were scrubbing the grout of the imported travertine tiles with a frantic, desperate energy. "Grandmother!" The largest one, Luca, gasped, scrambling to his feet. He was 6 feet 4 inches of pure muscle, a man who had strangled a cartel leader in Juarez with a rosary. Yet now he looked like a schoolboy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. His knuckles were stained red. "We did not expect you until Vespers." Eleanor adjusted her spectacles, her eyes magnifying the disappointment swimming in her irises. She clutched a Tupperware container against her chest. "I brought you boys some sfogliatelle. The ricotta is fresh, but I see you have no appetite for sweets today." She walked past them, ignoring the corpse wrapped in plastic sheeting in the corner of the room. It was the senator from Illinois. Or at least, it had been. Now it was just a logistical problem. She stopped at the center of the wet spot on the floor, the tip of her orthopedic shoe hovering inches from a stubborn crimson smear. "Luca," she said, her voice soft, like dried leaves skittering on pavement. "What have I told you about conducting business on the porous stone? Nonna, he wouldn't give up the encryption keys for the nuclear silos in North Dakota. We had to escalate," Luca stammered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning being set to a frigid 60 degrees. "It got messy." "Messy," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were spoiled milk. She looked at the other 2 men, Marco and Santino, who were still scrubbing, terrified to stop. "Messy is when you spill wine at a wedding. This is unprofessional, and it is rude. We have the delegation from the Sinaloa cartel arriving in 40 minutes to discuss the heroin distribution routes for the entire Midwest. Do you think El Azul wants to smell the senator's bad decisions while he drinks his espresso?" She walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights burned below, a million souls oblivious to the fact that the woman standing above them held the leash to the monsters under their beds. She placed the Tupperware on a side table, next to a bust of Julius Caesar. "Get the acid," she commanded, not turning around. "The hydrochloric mixture, not the cheap stuff from the hardware store. The industrial grade we stole from the erratic shipment in Jersey." "Yes, Nonna," Marco said, jumping up. "And Marco," she added, her reflection in the glass catching his eye. She looked like everyone's grandmother, sweet and fragile, until you noticed that her shadow seemed to stretch out and swallow the light. If there is a single drop of blood left when the elevator doors open for our guests, I will have you cleaned up next. Do you understand? Yes, Nonna. Absolutely. Good. Now strip the body, burn the suit, grind the teeth. I need his dental records to vanish. The FBI is sniffing around the Cayman accounts, and I cannot have a dead politician linking us to the money laundering operation in Zurich. She sighed, a heavy, weary sound. I came here to knit and listen to my soaps, and instead I am micromanaging a disposal crew. It is hard to find good help these days. She moved to the oversized leather armchair facing the view, sitting down with a groan of relief. She reached into her knitting bag, pulling out a half-finished scarf and a silenced .22 caliber pistol, placing the gun on the armrest as casually as a remote control. "Luca," she called out. "Yes, grandmother?" "Before you dissolved the senator, did you get the codes?" Luca reached into his pocket and pulled out a blood-spattered flash drive. "Yes, we have full access to the tactical grid." Nonna Elena smiled, a genuine warm expression that did not reach her cold, calculating eyes. "Wonderful. Put it on the tray with the cookies. Tonight we negotiate from a position of strength. Now scrub harder, my darling. That spot is not going to remove itself." The scent of industrial bleach struggled to overpower the aroma of warm vanilla and citrus zest rising from the sfogliatelle. Eleanor sat in her armchair, her knitting needles clicking a rhythmic, hypnotic tempo that seemed to count down the seconds of the men's lives. The scrubbing had ceased. The floor was pristine, the travertine reflecting the recessed lighting like a dark mirror. The acid was doing its work in the master bathroom's oversized tub, turning a powerful elected official into a slurry that would be flushed into the city's sewage system, mingling with the waste of the very constituents he had failed to protect. The private elevator chime echoed through the penthouse, a soft, pleasant sound that heralded the arrival of men who decapitated rivals on TikTok. "Jackets on!" Elena commanded, not looking up from her scarf. "Cover the holsters. We represent civilization here." Luca, Marco, and Santino donned their bespoke blazers, smoothing the fabric over their bulky frames. When the doors slid open, 4 men stepped out. They wore alligator boots and shirts that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. At the center was El Azul, a man whose mustache was as legendary as his cruelty. He scanned the room, his hand hovering near his waist, expecting a battalion of guards. Instead, he saw 3 well-dressed statues and a tiny woman with a messy bun of white hair, struggling with a complex stitch pattern. "Welcome," Eleanor said, her voice fragile. "Come in, sit. The view's lovely this time of night. You can see the Port Authority docks from here. My grandsons control 3 of the crane operators there. It makes shipping uncomplicated." El Azul hesitated, then walked forward, his boots clicking on the freshly cleaned tiles. He sat opposite her, sinking into the leather. "Doña Elena, I expected more security." "Security implies fear, Hector." She used his real name, a breach of protocol that made his bodyguards tense up. "I have no reason to fear you. Do you like ricotta? I made these myself." She gestured to the Tupperware. "I am not hungry," El Azul grunted. "We are here for the Midwest, the Chicago distribution hubs. My organization requires the rail lines." "And you shall have them?" Eleanor said, finally setting her knitting down. She picked up the china saucer with the flash drive resting on it, right next to a dusting of powdered sugar. "But the price has changed." "We agreed on 30% and protection from the DEA," El Azul snapped. "That was before I acquired the override keys for the Minotaur Tactical Defense Grid," she said, tapping the blood-speckled drive with a manicured fingernail. This little stick controls the drone surveillance patterns for the entire northern border. I can make your trucks invisible to thermal imaging, Hector. Or I can light them up like Christmas trees for the Border Patrol." The room went silent. The cartel leader stared at the drive. The value wasn't millions. It was billions. It was the difference between being a criminal and being a ghost. 50%. Elena whispered. "And you wash my cash through your resort chain in Cancun. I need $300 million cleaned by the end of the quarter. The Swiss are getting skittish, and I need to move liquidity into crypto and rare earth minerals." El Azul looked at his men, then back at the frail woman. He realized with a dawn of horror that the rumors were true. She wasn't just a facilitator. She was the architect. 40. He countered, his voice losing its edge. 50. She smiled, sweet as honey. "And you will try a pastry. It is rude to refuse hospitality in my house." He took a pastry. He took the deal. If you were sitting across from Nonna Elena, would you have the courage to negotiate? Or would you fold immediately? Tell us your strategy below. Once the Mexicans had departed, their pockets lighter, but their strategic power vastly increased. Elena permitted herself a sigh. She walked to the wet bar and poured a glass of sherry. The adrenaline of the deal was fading, replaced by the gnawing cold ache in her joints, and the sharper, more dangerous ache of suspicion. "Luca," she said, her back to the room. "Yes, Nonna." "Why did the senator know we were coming for him?" The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush lungs. Luca exchanged a glance with Marco. I don't know, Nonna. Maybe he was paranoid?" "Paranoia is checking your blind spot. Knowing the exact time my team would breach the perimeter is intelligence." She turned, sipping the sherry. "Someone is singing, Luca. Someone is chirping to the feds. And it is coming from inside the family." She walked over to the large mahogany desk, where a laptop sat open. The screen displayed a complex web of bank transfers. Shell companies in Panama routing funds to construction firms in New Jersey, disguised as consulting fees. But a red flag blinked in the corner of the screen, a subroutine she had installed herself, a digital tripwire. "Someone accessed the ledger at 4 this morning," she said, her voice dropping to a register that made the hair on Luca's arms stand up. "From a device registered to this building." The 3 men froze. They were killers, men who had dissolved bodies and silenced witnesses. But under her gaze, they were terrified children. "I treat you like my own blood," Elena said, walking slowly toward them. She reached up and patted Santino's cheek. He flinched. "I pay for your children's private schools. I paid for your mother's hip surgery, Marco. And yet, one of you thinks he can sell me to the FBI for a reduced sentence and a spot in witness protection." She laughed, a dry rattling sound. "There is no protection from me. I have people in the marshal's office. I have people in the cafeteria, where they serve the bad coffee at the DOJ. If you run, I will find you. If you talk, I will silence you." She returned to her chair and picked up the silenced pistol again, weighing it. "But I am a fair woman. I am a grandmother. I believe in forgiveness, if the confession is voluntary." "Who do you think is the traitor in the penthouse? Is it the loyal muscle, the quiet cleaner, or someone we haven't met yet? Drop your theory in the comments." "It wasn't us, Nonna!" Marco cried out, dropping to his knees. "I swear on the Virgin Mary." "Don't bring her into this. She has enough to worry about." Elena snapped. "Get up. You look pathetic. If it wasn't you, then it was the accountant, Mr. Sterling. He was here yesterday to discuss the union bribes for the dock workers." She checked her watch. It was a vintage Cartier, stolen from the wrist of a French diplomat in the 70s. Bring him to me. He lives in the Hamptons. Use the helicopter. If he is asleep, wake him. If he is with his mistress, bring her too. She can learn a lesson about infidelity. Consider it done, Luca said, relieved the gun wasn't pointed at him. He motioned for the others to move. Wait, Elena commanded, before you go. She reached into her knitting bag and pulled out 3 thick envelopes. She tossed them onto the coffee table. They landed with a heavy thud, the sound of stacked $100 bills. Your bonuses for the senator job. Buy your wives something nice. Maybe a brooch or a semi-automatic weapon, whatever they prefer. The men took the envelopes, murmuring their thanks, their loyalty bought and paid for once again. Fear and greed, the 2 currents that powered her world. And Luca, she added, her eyes narrowing behind her spectacles. Check the wheel wells of the helicopter before you take off. If Mr. Sterling is the rat, he might have planted a tracker. If I see a black SUV tailing you, you won't have to worry about the feds. You'll have to worry about me. Yes, Nonna. They left, leaving her alone in the vast, silent penthouse. Elena walked to the window, looking down at the city of New York. It was a grid of lights, a circuit board of power and corruption. She owned the politicians who zoned the districts, the police captains who patrolled the streets, and the drug lords who poisoned the alleys. She felt a vibration in her pocket, a text message on her burner phone. It was from a number that didn't exist. They know about Zurich. Get out now. Elena stared at the screen. Her heart gave a single hard thump against her ribs. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She walked to the kitchen, opened the freezer, and moved a bag of frozen peas aside to reveal a red button recessed into the back wall. It was the protocol for total liquidation. The scorched earth contingency. If she pressed it, the servers in the basement would fry. The accounts in the Caymans would scatter into 1,000,000 untraceable fragments, and a shaped charge on the gas main in the basement would turn the building into a crater. She hovered her finger over the button. The ultimate power move. To destroy it all rather than let them take it. Would you press the button and burn your empire to the ground to save yourself, or stand and fight the inevitable? Make your choice. She pulled her hand back. Not yet. She had cookies in the oven, and she still had a rat to catch. Elena closed the freezer door, adjusted her cardigan, and went back to her knitting. The night was young, and there was still so much work to be done. The oven timer dinged with a cheerful, high-pitched chime that seemed wildly out of place in a room where the fate of nations was often decided. Elena smoothed the front of her cardigan, walked to the Viking range, and donned a pair of floral oven mitts. She pulled the tray out, the scent of warm oatmeal and cinnamon instantly warring with the sterile, conditioned air of the penthouse. They were perfect. Golden brown edges, soft centers. She placed the tray on the cooling rack and removed the mitts, her expression hardening instantly as she turned her attention back to the burner phone on the marble island. Zurich. That one word was a sledgehammer. It meant the accounts holding the proceeds from the Venezuelan oil siphoning and the darker, bloodier money from the arms deal in Yemen were exposed. Someone had cracked the shell companies. She picked up the landline, a secure hardwired connection that bypassed the local exchange. She dialed a number that rang in a basement in Jersey City. Hello? A young, panicked voice answered. It was Kevin, her cybersecurity specialist. He was 22, brilliant, and currently putting himself through MIT on her dime. Kevin, darling, Elena said, her voice sweet as molasses. Are you wearing your warm socks? It's chilly today. Nonna, is that you? I was just about to call. The firewalls on the Swiss servers are lighting up like a Christmas tree. Someone is inside. I know, dear. I need you to initiate the magnet protocol. There was a silence on the other end. The magnets? Nonna, that will wipe everything. The ledger, the transaction history, the blackmail files on the senator. We're talking about $3 billion in active assets turning into static. Elena picked up a cookie, blowing on it gently. Money can be reprinted, Kevin. Freedom cannot. Do it. And then, I want you to go to your mother's house in Trenton and stay in the basement until I call you. Do not order pizza. Do not log on to World of Warcraft. Do you understand? Yes, Nonna. Initiating wipe now. She hung up. $3 billion gone in the blink of an eye. It stung, like a paper cut. But infection was the real killer. She had other accounts. The Cayman stash. The diamonds in the Singapore vault. The physical cash buried in airtight drums beneath a pig farm in Alabama. A grandmother always saves for a rainy day. And it was pouring. If you had 10 seconds to hide $1 billion, would you trust cryptocurrency or physical diamonds? Tell us your strategy. Elena walked into the living room, where the panoramic view of Manhattan offered no comfort. The lights below were just eyes watching her. She needed to secure the physical assets before the digital rot spread. The elevator doors slid open with a soft hiss. Dante stepped out. He was her logistics head, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s who spent more on cologne than most families spent on rent. He was carrying a leather briefcase and looking paler than usual. "Nonna," he said, bowing his head slightly. He didn't step onto the Persian rug. He knew the rules. "We have a problem at the docks in Newark." "Take off your shoes, Dante," she said, sitting in her armchair and picking up her knitting needles. "You're tracking mud. And tell me why the shipment of medical supplies hasn't left for Sudan yet." Dante fumbled with his loafers, nearly tripping. "It's the union foreman. He wants a bigger cut. He says the crates look too heavy for dialysis machines. He suspects it's munitions." "Suspects?" Elena purled a row, the needles clicking rhythmically. "He should know better than to suspect. He should know to count his money and look the other way. The crates are filled with shoulder-mounted surface-to-air missile launchers. Dante. If he opens one, he won't find a kidney machine. He'll find 20 years in federal prison." I told him that. He's pushing. He says with the heat on the family, right now, the price has doubled. Elena sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "Greed is such an ugly quality in the working class. It lacks ambition. Fine. Pay him double." Dante blinked. "Really?" "Pay him double," she repeated, looking up over her spectacles. "In cash. Send Benny the mute to deliver it. And tell Benny to make sure the foreman counts it." "Okay, I'll handle it. And Dante," she added, her voice dropping an octave, "tell Benny to put the money in a bag that has been treated with the contact toxin I developed last winter. The one derived from the pufferfish. The foreman will count the money, lick his fingers to separate the bills, and within 4 hours, he will suffer a massive cardiac arrest. Then, we take the money back." Dante swallowed hard. "Yes, Nonna. That's brilliant." "It's not brilliant, dear. It's thrifty. Waste not, want not. Now, would you like a cookie before you go? They're oatmeal raisin." Dante looked at the plate of cookies on the side table. He looked at Elena's innocent smile. He looked at the door. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. "Would you eat the cookie if a crime lord offered it to you, knowing her reputation? Yes or no?" I just ate, Nonna. Thank you, I have to go deal with Benny." "Suit yourself. You look thin. You should eat more." As Dante retreated into the elevator, Elena's phone buzzed again. It was Luca. "We have Sterling." Luca's voice came through, accompanied by the thumping of helicopter rotors. "He was on his boat. He put up a fight. He's crying now. Bring him to the warehouse in Queens, not here. The penthouse is compromised," Elena said. "Did he have any electronics on him?" "Just a laptop and a satellite phone. We smashed both." "Good boy. I'm heading to the safe house. Meet me there. And Luca, if he bleeds on the upholstery of the chopper, you're cleaning it." She hung up and moved to the hallway closet, pushing aside the heavy winter coats, mink, sable, wool, to reveal a steel door. She punched in a code, and it clicked open. Inside was not a panic room, but an armory. Walls lined with silenced MP5 submachine guns, racks of ceramic body armor, and shelves of grenades sat next to jars of homemade tomato sauce. Elena bypassed the heavy rifles. She reached for a small, pearl-handled .22 pistol and slipped it into her knitting bag. It was discreet, quiet, and at close range. It did the job just fine. She also grabbed a thick stack of passports. Elena Rossetti, Maria Vlasi, Grandma Moses. She was about to leave when the landline rang again. She paused. Only 3 people had this number. Kevin was in a basement. Luca was in a helicopter. That left 1 person. She picked up the receiver and held it to her ear, saying nothing. "Elena," a deep, heavily accented voice said. It sounded like gravel crunching under tires. It was El Santo, the head of the Baja cartel, her business partner in the cocaine distribution network, and her greatest rival for control of the North American corridor. "Alejandro," she replied pleasantly. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I hope you received the fruit basket I sent for your daughter's quinceañera." The fruit was delicious. The detonator hidden in the pineapple was a nice touch, though my bomb squad found it in time. "A grandmother likes to keep people on their toes," she said. "Why are you calling, Alejandro? It's past my bedtime." "I hear you are having trouble with the banks in Zurich. I hear the Americans are looking for a grandmother to put in a cage." "Rumors, dear. Just wind in the trees." "The wind is blowing hard, Elena. My sources tell me the feds have a witness. Someone high up. Someone who sat at your dinner table." Elena gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles turning white. "Who?" "I could tell you." El Santo purred. "But information costs. You have the shipping routes for the Jersey ports. I want them. Hand over the union contracts, and I give you the name of the rat." It was a shakedown. He was circling like a shark. If she gave up the ports, she lost the arms trade. If she didn't, she might go to prison for the rest of her very short life. "I don't make deals with terrorists, Alejandro. I am a legitimate businesswoman." "You are a ghost, Elena. But even ghosts can be exorcised. You have 1 hour. Then I call the FBI and tell them exactly where to find the bodies you buried under the foundation of the stadium." The line went dead. Helena stood in the silent hallway. The walls felt like they were closing in. Sterling wasn't the rat. Sterling was a distraction. The leak about Zurich. The pressure from the cartel. It was a coordinated attack. Someone was orchestrating her downfall from the inside, feeding information to her enemies to weaken her before the kill. She needed to move. Now! She walked to the kitchen, grabbed the plate of cookies and dumped them into a Tupperware container. She wasn't leaving them behind. She put on her coat, grabbed her knitting bag with the gun, and headed for the service elevator. As the doors closed, she looked at her reflection in the polished brass. An old woman. A harmless, sweet old woman. She smiled. It was the last thing they would ever see coming. The service elevator descended 40 floors to the parking garage. A black sedan was waiting, engine idling. Her driver, a massive former linebacker named Tiny, opened the door. "Where to, Nonna?" "Queens, Tiny. Drive fast. And if anyone follows us, run them off the road." "You got it." As the car peeled out of the garage, merging into the chaotic New York traffic, Elena pulled out a notepad. She began to list the names of everyone who knew about the bodies under the stadium. It was a short list. Luca, Dante, Kevin, and one other, her own grandson. Not a metaphorical grandson, but her biological flesh and blood. Michael, the one she had sent to law school, the one who was currently running for district attorney on a tough-on-crime platform. A cold chill went through her that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Michael knew the business. He knew the bodies. He knew the accounts. She had groomed him to take over the legitimate side, to be the face of the family that washed the blood away. Could it be him? Could her own blood be selling her out to build his political career? Who is the ultimate traitor? The ambitious biological grandson running for DA or the silent partner we haven't suspected? Cast your vote. "Tiny," Elena said, her voice trembling slightly. "Change of plans." "Yeah, Nonna. We aren't going to the warehouse yet. Take me to the campaign headquarters. I need to see Michael." "It's late, Nonna. He'll be prepping for the debate." "He will always make time for his grandmother," she said, checking the load in the .22 pistol. "After all, family comes first." The rain began to fall as the black sedan tore across the Queensboro Bridge, turning the city lights into smeared streaks of red and gold against the glass. Inside the climate-controlled silence of the vehicle, Elena opened her Tupperware container. The aroma of freshly baked oatmeal raisin cookies filled the car, masking the faint metallic scent of the gun oil coming from her knitting bag. "Tiny," she said softly, not looking up from the phone she was tapping on with arthritic dexterity. "The shipment in Newark, the grand pianos from falsified German imports. Did they clear customs?" Tiny glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes nervous. "There's a snag, Nonna. The dock foreman, O'Malley. He says the inspection fees went up. He wants another 50,000 or he opens the crates." Elena sighed, a sound of profound disappointment, like a teacher realizing a student hadn't done their homework. Inside those crates were not pianos, but 300 disassembled assault rifles destined for a separatist group in the Balkans. It was a $12 million deal that funded her clean energy stocks. 50,000, she mused. Greed is such an ugly quality in a public servant. Tiny, call Dante. Tell him to pay O'Malley a visit at his home. Tonight. Tell him to bring a picture of O'Malley's mistress, the one who works at the nail salon on 4th Street, and tell Dante to bring the pruning shears. "The shears, Nonna?" "Yes. Tell Mr. O'Malley that if he opens my crates, I will prune his family tree starting with the branch he is cheating on his wife with. He will sign the manifest, and he will do it for free." She paused, picking a crumb off her lap. "And send his wife a bouquet of lilies. I feel bad for her. She has terrible taste in men. Business requires a firm hand. If you were in Nonna's shoes, would you pay the bribe to keep it quiet, or send the message with the shears? Tell us your management style." The car swerved off the highway, cutting through the wet streets of Queens. They were approaching the campaign headquarters. Michael's face was plastered on billboards, a handsome jawline-heavy vision of justice with the slogan, "A new DA for a safer New York." It was ironic, considering his tuition, his suit, and his campaign bus were all paid for by the proceeds of high-grade heroin and illegal gambling rings. "Park in the alley," Elena commanded. "I do not want the press to see me. It ruins the mystique." Tiny maneuvered the large vehicle between two dumpsters. Elena checked her reflection once more. pinched her cheeks to bring a rosy color to her pale skin, and stepped out into the drizzle. Tiny held a large umbrella over her, walking her to the back entrance like a loyal guard dog protecting a precious antique. The back door was guarded by 2 private security contractors. They were young, muscular, and looked bored. As Elena approached, one stepped forward to block the path. "Private event, lady. No fans back here." Tiny moved a step forward, his fist clenching, but Elena placed a gloved hand on his bicep to stop him. She looked up at the guard, her eyes twinkling with a grandmotherly warmth that did not reach her pupils. "Young man," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sell the act. "I am Michael's grandmother. I have brought him sustenance. He forgets to eat when he is saving the city." She lifted the Tupperware. The guard hesitated, looking at the old woman in the wool coat. Then he looked at Tiny, who stared back with the dead eyes of a man who had dissolved bodies in acid baths. "Let her through," the second guard whispered urgently. "That's her. That's the matriarch." The first guard paled, stepping aside so quickly he nearly tripped. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't recognize—" "Shh." She patted his cheek. Her hand was ice cold. "Next time, check the list before you block the path. Accidents happen in dark alleys, dear." She swept past them, entering the chaotic hum of the campaign headquarters. The room was a buzz of activity. Young staffers in rolled-up sleeves were shouting into phones, analyzing exit polls and drinking cheap coffee. It smelled of toner ink and desperation. Elena moved through the room like a shark in a koi pond. The noise seemed to dampen as she passed. Experienced political operatives, men who knew where the dark money came from, stopped talking and lowered their heads in respect. She ignored them all, her eyes locking onto the glass-walled office at the back. Michael was there. He was arguing with his campaign manager, gesturing wildly. He looked tired. Good. Tired men made mistakes. She didn't knock. She simply opened the door and walked in. "Michael," she said. The room went silent. The campaign manager, a slimy man named Greg who thought he was a kingmaker, looked annoyed. "Excuse me. We are in a strategy session." "Out," Elena whispered. She didn't look at Greg. She kept her eyes on her grandson. "Greg, give us a minute," Michael said, his voice tight. "But the debate prep." "I said give us a minute," Michael snapped. Greg gathered his papers and scurried out, closing the glass door behind him. Michael ran a hand through his perfect hair. He loosened his tie. "Nonna, you can't be here. The feds have eyes on this building. If they photograph you here, the narrative changes from Crusader for Justice to Mafia Prince in 5 minutes. Sit down, Michael." Elena placed the Tupperware on his mahogany desk, right on top of his polling data. "Have a cookie." "I don't want a cookie." "I said have a cookie." Her voice dropped an octave, losing all the frailty. It was the voice that had ordered the bombing of a rival cartel's tunnel network 3 years ago. Michael sat. He took a cookie. His hand was shaking. "El Santo called me," Elena said, taking the chair opposite him. She sat with perfect posture, her hands folded over her knitting bag. "He knows about the stadium. He knows about the bodies." Michael chewed slowly, his face draining of color. "That's impossible. Only 4 people know." "Exactly. Luca, Dante, Kevin, and you." Elena tilted her head. "Luca is currently in a drum of cement off the Jersey Shore because he stole from the vending machine business, so he isn't talking. Dante is my dog, loyal to the bone. Kevin handles the offshore accounts and is currently in the Cayman Islands. That leaves you, Michael." "Me?" Michael stood up, outrage flashing in his eyes. "You think I told the Baja Cartel About the bodies? Nonna, I am trying to become the district attorney. If those bodies are found, my life is over. I have more to lose than anyone. Do you? Elena asked calmly. Or maybe you made a deal. Maybe you trade your grandmother to the feds or the cartel, and in exchange they let you be the hero who took down the biggest crime lord in the hemisphere. It would guarantee you the governor's mansion. I am your blood! Michael slammed his hand on the desk. I love you. Love is a luxury, Michael. Loyalty is a currency. And right now, the exchange rate is fluctuating. She reached into her bag. Michael flinched, expecting the gun. Instead, she pulled out a knitting needle. She began to pick at a loose thread on his expensive suit jacket. El Santo demands the shipping routes. If I give them up, we lose the arms trade. We lose the leverage with the Senate. We become nothing but common drug dealers. So don't give them up, Michael hissed. Call his bluff. It's not a bluff. He gave me a deadline. I have 40 minutes left. She looked deep into his eyes. If you are the rat, Michael, tell me now. I will make it quick. I will make it painless. I will tell your mother it was an aneurysm. But if I find out later, I will peel the skin from your bones while you watch. The tension is suffocating. Do you believe Michael is innocent, or is he playing the long game to take the crown? Cast your suspicion now. Michael stared at her, sweat beading on his forehead. It's not me, Nonna. I swear on my life, but there is something you don't know. Enlighten me. Kevin, Michael whispered. The accountant. You think he's in the Caymans? He's not. Elena went very still. Where is he? I saw a credit flag on the internal campaign finance logs. A transfer from a shell company we use for the laundering. It was authorized by Kevin's private key. The IP address wasn't the Caribbean. It was Virginia. Virginia, Quantico, the FBI Academy, or Langley. Elena's mind raced. If Kevin was in Virginia, he wasn't just talking to the feds. He was handing them the keys to the kingdom. He knew the bank codes, the shell companies, the bribes paid to senators. He knew everything. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice dangerously low. I found out an hour ago. I was trying to verify it before I panicked you. I didn't want to start a war if it was just a glitch. A war is already started, child. We are just the last ones to hear the gunfire. Helena stood up. She grabbed the Tupperware. Finish your cookie. It gives you energy. Ah, where are you going? Virginia is a long drive, Elena said, checking her watch. But Tiny drives fast. And I have friends in Washington who owe me favors. Big favors. Nonna, you can't go to Virginia. If Kevin is with the feds, he's in protective custody. You can't touch him. Elena smiled, a sweet, terrifying expression. The FBI has to eat, Michael. They have cafeterias. They have coffee breaks. Poison is a woman's weapon, they say. It is quiet. It is patient. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Michael, if El Santo calls the FBI about the stadium, you need to be ready. Have a press conference prepared. Deny everything. Blame it on the previous administration. Say it is a political witch hunt. I know how to spin, Nonna. Good, because if I don't get to Kevin in time, you won't be spinning stories. You'll be spinning plates in the prison cafeteria. She walked out of the office, past the staring staffers, and back into the rainy alley. Tiny was waiting with the door open. Change of plans, Tiny, she said, climbing in. We aren't going to the warehouse. We are going to the airport. Tell the pilot to prep the Gulf Stream. We are going to D.C. D.C.? Nonna, the airspace is tight. Money clears the air, Tiny. Get me on the phone with Senator Mitchell. I paid for his mistress's abortion in 1998. He will answer my call." As the car roared back into traffic, Elena pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. She turned to the page marked Recipes. It wasn't food. It was chemical compounds. Digitalis, ricin, cyanide. El Santo wanted a war. He would get one. But first she had to silence the accountant. A loose thread could unravel the whole sweater, and Elena never left a project unfinished. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered. "Hello?" "Tick-tock, Elena." El Santo's voice crackled. "You have 30 minutes. I don't see the shipping contracts in my inbox. I am having trouble with the Wi-Fi, Alejandro. Old people and technology, you know how it is. Do not play games with me. The FBI tip line is on speed dial." "Alejandro," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Do you remember when we met in Bogotá? You told me you loved your horses more than your children. What is your point?" "My point is, I have men near your stables in Baja. It would be a shame if your prize stallion broke a leg. Or 4. There was a silence on the line. Cold, heavy silence. You wouldn't. "I am a grandmother, Alejandro. I do what is necessary to protect my family. You threaten my grandson's career. I threaten your horses. An eye for an eye, a hoof for a hoof." She hung up before he could respond. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. It was a bluff. She had no one in Baja. But El Santo didn't know that. Fear was the only language men like him understood. She looked out the window at the skyline of New York. Her city, her empire, built on blood and cookies. She wasn't going to let it fall. Not today. The clock is ticking down. Elena is flying into the lion's den to silence a witness inside FBI custody. What is her best move? A. Use Senator Mitchell to pull the witness out. B. Infiltrate the safe house as a cleaning lady. C. Strike a deal with the CIA to take out the FBI witness. Make your choice. The fate of the family depends on it. Tiny handed the phone back to Elena as the black sedan tore across the tarmac toward the waiting Gulf Stream. The rain hammered against the roof, drowning out the distant wail of sirens. Senator Mitchell was on the line, and he sounded like a man standing on a trap door. "Elena, listen to me," Mitchell stammered, his voice thin over the encrypted line. "I can't just walk a witness out of FBI custody. They have him at a black site in Arlington. It's not a local precinct. It's a fortress." Elena adjusted the lace collar of her blouse. "Robert, do you remember the fundraiser in 2004? The one where you had too much scotch and told the waitress things that would have ended your marriage and your career? That was a long time ago, Elena. Interest compounds, Robert. I need access. I don't need you to walk him out. I need you to get me in. Tell them I am his attorney's special consultant. Tell them I am his priest's mother. I do not care what lie you tell, as long as the door opens. If I do this, we're even. The debt is paid. We are even when I say we are even. Text me the address. And Robert, if the FBI asks, you never spoke to me. You were busy drafting legislation to save the whales." She ended the call and tossed the phone to Tiny. The car screeched to a halt beside the jet. The engines were already whining, a high-pitched scream that promised escape. Elena stepped out, ignoring the umbrella Tiny held for her, letting the cold rain mist her face. It felt like clarity. Once on board, the cabin was warm and smelled of lemon polish and expensive leather. Elena settled into her usual seat, the one facing the door. She opened her knitting bag, but she didn't pull out wool. She pulled out a small airtight container and a box of bakery-fresh macarons she had purchased that morning in Little Italy. "Tiny," she called out without looking up. "Lock the door, and tell the pilot to fly low until we clear the tri-state area. I don't want to show up on anyone's radar until it is too late." She put on a pair of thick reading glasses and a pair of latex gloves. With the precision of a surgeon, she used a syringe to inject a clear liquid into the pistachio filling of the green macarons. "Is that the ricin, Nonna?" Tiny asked, strapping himself into the seat opposite her. He looked ridiculous. A 300-pound mountain of muscle squeezed into a leather armchair, clutching a submachine gun like a teddy bear. "Ricin takes too long, dear. 3 to 5 days. By then, Kevin will have sung the entire opera to the prosecutors." She depressed the plunger gently. "This is a concentrated extract of monkshood. Aconite. It stops the heart in minutes. It looks like a cardiac arrest brought on by stress. Poor Kevin." The pressure was just too much for him. She arranged the deadly cookies back in the box, tying it with a silk ribbon. "If you had to eliminate a traitor, would you choose a silent poison or a loud explosion? Tell us your method in the comments." "What about El Santo?" Tiny asked, watching the runway blur past the window. "He isn't going to wait. If he hits the shipment in Rotterdam, we lose $40 million in product." Helena took off her gloves and smoothed her skirt. "El Santo is a businessman, Tiny. A savage one, but a businessman. He won't burn $40 million unless he is sure I am weak. Right now, he is confused. He thinks I have men in Baja. Confusion buys us time." "But we don't have men in Baja." "No, but we have men in Rotterdam. Send a message to the dockmaster. Tell him to move the containers to the secondary warehouse, the one under the shell company, Global Aid Solutions. If El Santo hits the docks, let him blow up a few crates of powdered milk and humanitarian blankets. It will make him look like a monster on the evening news." The jet banked sharply, climbing through the storm clouds. Helena closed her eyes for a moment. The Empire was a heavy thing to carry. It wasn't just the drugs or the guns. It was the logistics, the intricate web of bribes that kept the port authorities blind, the shell companies in Panama that washed the blood out of the money, the senators who ensured the investigations always hit dead ends. Kevin knew the account numbers. He knew the routing codes for the Cayman accounts where the pension funds for the families of her fallen soldiers were kept. If the feds froze those accounts, the loyalty of her army would evaporate. A mercenary without a paycheck is just an enemy in waiting. "Nonna," Tiny said softly. "We are landing in 20 minutes. The senator sent the address. It's a safe house in the suburbs. Virginia. Standard split level, reinforced windows, perimeter alarms." "Who is guarding him?" "Marshals. Maybe 4 inside, 2 outside, in a surveillance van." Elena nodded. "Good. Marshals get bored. They expect commandos with assault rifles. They do not expect a confused old woman delivering a care package. You're going in alone?" "You will be around the corner, Tiny. If you hear shots, you come in through the wall, literally. Drive the SUV through the living room if you have to. But let us hope it doesn't come to that. I hate getting drywall dust on my coat." Nonna is betting her life on the element of surprise. Is she underestimating the U.S. Marshals? Or are they underestimating her? Predict the outcome below. The car ride from the private airfield to the safe house was tense. Elena applied a touch of powder to her face, making herself look paler, more fragile. She hunched her shoulders. She practiced a tremor in her hand. By the time they pulled up a block away from the target house, Elena was gone. In her place was a harmless, teetering grandmother who looked like she couldn't hurt a fly, let alone orchestrate a global crime syndicate. "Stay here," she whispered to Tiny. She grabbed the box of macarons and a cane. The rain had stopped, leaving the suburban street glistening and dark. She walked slowly toward the house. It was nondescript, but she saw the telltale signs, the extra antennas on the roof, the sedan parked down the street with 2 men sitting too still. She shuffled up the driveway and pressed the doorbell. Nothing happened for a long time. Then, a voice from a speaker. "Can I help you?" "Hello," Elena quavered, leaning into the camera. "Is this the Johnson residence? I have the treats for the bake sale." "Wrong house, ma'am. Please step away." "Oh dear. My grandson wrote down the address. 42 Maple Street." "Walk away, ma'am." Elena leaned heavily on the door frame, clutching her chest. She let the cane clatter to the ground. Oh my, I feel very dizzy." She slid down the door frame, sitting on the welcome mat, looking small and pathetic. Inside the house, the dynamic shifted. She knew exactly what they were seeing on the monitors. An old lady having a medical episode on their porch. If she died there, it would bring police, ambulances, attention. The one thing a safe house cannot afford is attention. The door cracked open. A man in a suit, gun holstered but visible, stepped out cautiously. He scanned the street. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "My pills!" Elena gasped, pointing to her purse. "I need water." The marshal hesitated. He looked at the frail woman, then at the empty street. He made the mistake decent men always made. He chose compassion over protocol. "All right, come inside just for a minute. Let's get you some water." He helped her up. She leaned her entire weight on him, looking up with watery, grateful eyes. "Thank you, young man. You are a saint." She was inside. The hallway was sterile, furniture rented, and there, sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands, was Kevin. He looked up, his eyes widening in absolute horror as he saw the old woman hobbling in on the arm of the marshal. "Nonna," Kevin whispered, the blood draining from his face. The marshal froze. "You know her." Helena straightened up. The tremor in her hand vanished. She smiled and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Know me," Elena said, her voice suddenly strong, sharp as a razor. "I used to change his diapers, and now I am here to clean up his mess one last time." She didn't reach for a weapon. She simply set the box of macarons on the table. "Hello, Kevin. You look thin. Have you been eating?" The marshal reached for his radio. "We have a breach." "I wouldn't do that," Elena said calmly. "My driver is outside. He has an RPG pointed at this house. If I don't walk out in 5 minutes, he fires. We all die. I have lived a long life, have you?" The marshal's hand hovered over his radio. The threat was absurd, yet looking at the steel in this old woman's eyes, he believed it. "Kevin," Elena said, ignoring the gun pointed at her. "Eat a cookie. We have business to discuss." Kevin is trapped between the feds and the family. Does he accept his fate and eat the cookie, or does he try to run? Vote now. Kevin stared at the pale green macaron as if it were a live grenade. His hand shook so violently that the delicate confection vibrated against the table. The marshal kept his hand hovering near his holster, sweat beading on his forehead, his eyes darting between the frail old woman and the window where the imaginary, or perhaps very real, RPG was aiming. "It is pistachio, Kevin," Elena said, her voice smooth as velvet, but heavy with disappointment. "Your favorite, remember? When you scraped your knee playing soccer, Nonna would always have a pistachio macaron for you. Go on, eat." Kevin looked at the marshal, then back at Elena. The silence stretched, tight as a piano wire. With a whimper that disgraced his 30 years of life, Kevin picked up the cookie and shoved it into his mouth. He chewed, tears streaming down his face, waiting for the cyanide to tighten his throat or the strychnine to seize his muscles. He swallowed. He gasped. He lived. "Good boy," Elena said, patting his cheek with a hand that felt like cold marble. "Now, wipe your face. You look like a leaky faucet." She turned her gaze to the marshal. The transition was instant. The grandmotherly warmth evaporated, replaced by the cold calculation of a CEO negotiating a hostile takeover. "Officer Miller, isn't it? David Miller. 2 daughters. One at NYU, one needing braces. Orthodontics are terribly expensive these days." The marshal stiffened. "Is that a threat?" "It is an observation," Elena corrected, smoothing the lapel of her coat. "I have no interest in killing federal agents. It is bad for business. It brings heat, and I prefer the cold. However, Kevin is leaving with me. He has a family reunion to attend. I can't let you do that." "David," she sighed, sounding bored. "In the trunk of my car, there is a briefcase. Inside is $500,000 in bearer bonds, tax-free, untraceable. Consider it a scholarship fund for the girls. You can be the hero who died trying to stop a kidnapping, or you can be the wealthy man who arrived 2 minutes too late because he was checking the perimeter. Which future do you prefer?" Nonna just offered the marshal a choice between his duty and his daughter's future. Every man has a price, but is David Miller's price high enough? Do you take the money or the bullet? Predict his choice below. The marshal looked at Kevin, a sniveling wreck of a witness who had already cost the taxpayer millions in protection. He looked at the old woman who radiated a terrifying ancient power. Slowly, deliberately, David Miller took a step back. He turned his back to them and walked toward the kitchen window, staring out at the empty street. 2 minutes, the marshal said softly to the glass. "You are a good father," Elena said. She gripped Kevin's ear, twisting it sharply. "Move. Tiny is waiting." They walked out of the house, Kevin sobbing quietly, Elena setting a brisk pace with her cane. The black SUV idled at the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Tiny, a man whose neck was wider than Elena's waist. He wasn't holding an RPG. He was holding a ham sandwich. "Did he buy it, Nonna?" Tiny asked, unlocking the doors. "People always believe what they fear, Tiny. Put him in the back, middle seat, child lock." As the SUV peeled away, merging onto the highway toward the city, Elena pulled a burner phone from her purse. The domestic drama was over. The business day was just beginning. She dialed a number. "Senator," she said, her voice shifting again, becoming charming, aristocratic. "I saw your speech on C-SPAN. Marvelous. Yes, the donation for your re-election campaign has been routed through the charitable trust in the Caymans. It will appear as a donation from Citizens for Clean Parks. Yes, I need a favor. The Port Authority in Newark is holding a shipping container of mine. It is labeled as olive oil. It is actually guidance chips for long-range drones. Release it." She hung up before the senator could stammer a thank you. "Problems at the port?" Tiny asked, eyeing Kevin in the rearview mirror. "Just bureaucratic incompetence," Elena muttered, pulling a half-finished knitting project from her oversized bag. It was a scarf. Blood-red wool. The Colombians are expecting those chips by Friday. If we miss the window, I lose $12 million, and my reputation for punctuality. I value the reputation more. They drove into the industrial heart of the city, pulling into a vast warehouse disguised as a commercial laundry service. Steam billowed from vents, smelling of bleach and starch. Inside, however, the machines weren't washing sheets. Dozens of men in aprons were counting stacks of cash, running bills through counters that whirred like angry hornets. In the back, crates of assault rifles were being repacked into boxes labeled Premium Detergent. Eleanor walked in, Tiny dragging Kevin behind her like a sack of garbage. The hum of the warehouse didn't stop, but every head bowed as she passed. Respect, fear. She sat at a heavy oak table in the center of the chaos, placing her knitting needles down. A man in a sharp suit approached. Marco, her chief financial officer. Nonna, the crypto tumblers are slow today, Marco said, wiping sweat from his brow. The SEC is sniffing around the shell companies in Delaware. We washed 40 million this week, but we have another 60 sitting in cold storage. If we don't move it, the cartels get restless. The cartels are children, Eleanor snapped. They want their money. They wait until it is clean. Tell them if they complain, I will send their cash to them in pennies. Delivered by airdrop, without a parachute. Marco nodded, scribbling on a tablet. And the Moretti family. They have been encroaching on the sanitation contracts in Queens. They burned 2 of our trucks last night. Eleanor sighed, picking up her knitting again. The needles clicked rhythmically. The Morettis. I remember when Sal Moretti was stealing hubcaps. Now he thinks he is Caesar. She looked at Kevin, who was being tied to a chair by Tiny. Kevin, she said gently, you told the feds about the warehouse in Jersey, didn't you? I had to, Nonna. They had me on wire fraud. I didn't want to go to jail. Kevin blubbered. So you sent my men to jail instead. You broke the first rule. You hurt the family. Eleanor turned to Marco. Send a message to Moretti. Not a horsehead. That is cliché. Send him his son's car, with the son inside it. But make sure the boy is alive. Just bruised. We are not savages. We are business people sending a cease and desist. Eleanor is escalating the war with the Moretti family to protect her territory. Is mercy a sign of weakness in her world? Or is leaving the son alive a smarter strategic move? Tell us how you would handle the rival boss. And Kevin? Tiny asked, his hand resting on a heavy wrench. Eleanor looked at her grandson. She remembered teaching him to ride a bike. She remembered his first communion. She also remembered the 3 federal agents who had raided her Jersey stash house because of his testimony. Kevin is going on a trip, Elena said, her eyes focusing on her knitting. He is going to stay at the farm upstate, the one with no internet, no phone, and a very deep cellar. Nonna, please, Kevin screamed. You will learn to appreciate the quiet, Kevin. It will give you time to think about loyalty. She nodded to Tiny. Take him. And Tiny. Make sure he eats. He looks too thin. As Kevin was dragged away, screaming, Eleanor's phone buzzed again. It was a text, an encrypted message from a number she didn't recognize. I know what you did to the marshal. I know where the bodies are. I want half. Eleanor stopped knitting. Her heart rate didn't spike. Her hands didn't tremble. She stared at the screen. Kevin was a rat, yes, but Kevin was stupid. This text. This was intelligent. This was dangerous. Someone else was inside. Someone close. She looked around the warehouse. Marco was arguing with a banker on the phone. The men counting money were laughing. Tiny was coming back from the loading dock, wiping his hands on a rag. Marco, Elena called out. Bring me the personnel files. Everyone hired in the last 6 months. Is something wrong, Nonna? We have a leak in the roof, Marco, she whispered, her eyes scanning the room, suddenly seeing potential traitors in every face. And I hate getting wet. She reached into her purse and bypassed her pills, her knitting, and her rosary. Her hand closed around the cold steel of a compact, silenced .22 pistol. She placed it on the table, covering it with her red wool scarf. "Lock the doors," she commanded. "Nobody leaves until I finish this row." The text message changes everything. The traitor is in the room with her right now. Who do you suspect? Marco the money man, Tiny the muscle, or a character we haven't met yet? Cast your vote on who betrays the matriarch. The heavy iron bolt of the warehouse door slid home with a sound like a guillotine blade dropping. The laughter from the counting tables died instantly. 20 men, hardened criminals who had strangled rivals and smuggled narcotics across 3 continents, froze. They knew that sound. They knew that silence. When Nonna locked the doors, it meant school was in session, and the lesson was usually fatal. Eleanor adjusted her red wool scarf, ensuring it still concealed the small pistol, and picked up a butterscotch candy from a crystal bowl she kept next to her ammunition clips. She unwrapped it slowly, the crinkling paper echoing in the cavernous space. "Marco," she said, her voice soft, like dried leaves skittering on pavement. "Bring me the phone, the burner, the one for Washington." Marco hurried over, handing her a ruggedized satellite phone. His hands were shaking. He knew about the text message. He knew someone in this room was asking for a death sentence. Helena dialed a number from memory. She didn't look at the keypad. She looked at the men. She watched their eyes. The innocent ones looked confused. The guilty one would look at the exits. "Senator," Eleanor chirped into the phone, her tone shifting to that of a sweet, concerned donor. "It is Elena. I hope the peach cobbler arrived safely. I baked it myself." She paused, listening to the stammering on the other end. "Yes, and the $200,000 in the cooler, underneath the cobbler." "Good. I am calling about the shipment in the port of Newark, the container labeled agricultural machinery." She listened, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the room. A young man near the back, a counter named Silas, who handled the darker corners of the dark web, shifted his weight from his left foot to his right. "Senator, do not lie to me," Helena said, her voice dropping an octave, shedding the grandmotherly warmth. "I know customs has a hold on it. I paid for clear passage. If those containers are opened, they will not find tractors. They will find guidance chips for surface-to-air missiles intended for our friends in the Middle East. And if they find those chips, I will find the photos of you and that intern in the Cayman Islands. Do we have an understanding? Good. Release the container by noon." She hung up and tossed the phone to Marco. "Politicians! They take the money with one hand and clutch their pearls with the other. Marco, ensure the senator's re-election fund gets a bonus. We are not ungrateful." Helena uses blackmail to ensure her arms deal goes through, but she also pays the bribe. Is paying the bribe after threatening him a waste of money? Or does it ensure long-term loyalty? Tell us your strategy. "Now," Elena said, standing up. She was barely 5 feet tall, yet she cast a shadow that seemed to swallow the room. The text message. She began to walk between the rows of tables stacked high with cash. Bundles of 20s and 100s, wrapped in rubber bands, smelling of cocaine and old sweat. She stopped beside Tiny, who was looming over a terrified new recruit. "You!" She pointed a knitting needle at the recruit. "What is your name?" "Di Dante, Nonna." The boy stammered. He looked no older than 19. "Dante, you have a loose thread on your collar." She reached out, her wrinkled hand brushing his neck. He flinched. She grabbed his collar, pulling him down to her level with surprising strength. She sniffed him. "You smell like fear, Dante. And cheap cologne. Did you send a text message 5 minutes ago?" "No. No, Nonna, I swear on my mother," Dante cried, tears welling in his eyes. Elena stared into his soul for a long second, then patted his cheek. I believe you. Your mother is a good woman. I play bridge with her. Fix your tie. You look like a hobo. She moved on. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. She stopped at the tech station. Silas, the IT specialist, was typing furiously on a laptop. He didn't look up. Silas, Elena said, what are you working on so diligently? The crypto tumblers? Yes, Nonna, Silas said, his voice tight. Just moving the assets to the offshore accounts in Panama, trying to beat the SEC audit. You are a good boy, Silas. Always working. Elena leaned against the table. Do you like the sweater I made for you last Christmas? The blue one? I love it, Nonna. I wear it all the time. Elena sighed. That is a shame. Why? Silas stopped typing. Because I knitted that sweater with a very specific pattern. And I noticed you are not wearing it. In fact, I noticed you bought a new watch. A Patek Philippe. $50,000. She reached out and tapped the crystal face of the watch on his wrist. We do not pay you enough for this, Silas. Unless you found a new revenue stream. Perhaps selling out the location of the Marshal's grave? Silas froze. His eyes darted to the side door, 30 feet away. I invested in Bitcoin early, Nonna, Silas lied, sweat beading on his upper lip. Do not lie to your grandmother, Elena whispered. The text message came from an encrypted signal. You are the only one here who knows how to bypass Marco's firewall. You got greedy, Silas. You wanted half? You are a child playing with wolves. Silas shoved the table toward her, sending laptops and papers flying, and bolted for the door. Tiny! Elena didn't shout. She didn't have to. Tiny moved with the speed of a freight train. He intercepted Silas before he reached the exit, a massive fist connecting with the IT specialist's stomach. Silas folded like a lawn chair, gasping for air as he hit the concrete floor. Elena walked over slowly, the clicking of her sensible heels the only sound in the room. She stood over him, shaking her head. I trusted you with the digital keys to the kingdom, she said sadly. I made you cocoa when you were working late, and you sell me to the feds? They have my sister, Silas wheezed, clutching his gut. The FBI. They pinched her on a possession charge. They said they'd put her away for 20 years if I didn't give them something real. I had no choice, Nonna. The room went silent. A sob story. In this world, everyone had a sob story. Elena looked down at him. This was the intersection of business and family. If she let him live, she showed weakness to every man in the room. If she killed him, she lost the only man who understood the complex encryption of their banking network before he could teach a replacement. Your sister, Elena said thoughtfully. Maria, the one who works at the beauty salon in the Bronx. Silas nodded frantically. Please, don't hurt her. I won't hurt her, Elena said. But you have created a mess, Silas. A very expensive mess. She turned to Marco. How much is in the Panama account right now? 80 million. Liquid, Marco replied. And Silas is the only one with the final password? Yes, Nonna. He changed it yesterday. Said it was for security. Elena looked back at the traitor on the floor. She needed the password, but she also needed to make a point. Silas, darling, she said, her voice dripping with false honey. You are going to give Marco the password, right now. And if I do, you'll let me go? Silas asked, hope creeping into his voice. If you do, Elena said, reaching under her red scarf and withdrawing the silenced .22 pistol. I will ensure your sister has the best lawyer money can buy. She will walk free, I will take care of her. She will never know her brother was a rat. She racked the slide of the pistol. But if you do not give me the password in the next 10 seconds, I will have Tiny pay a visit to the beauty salon, and Maria will get a very close shave. It is a brutal ultimatum. Would you trust Nonna to keep her word about the sister? Or would you take the password to the grave? Comment your choice below. Silas looked at the gun, then at Tiny, then at Elena's cold, grandmotherly eyes. He knew she wasn't bluffing. She had poisoned a cartel boss's entire family over a dispute regarding trucking routes. The password, Silas whispered, defeated. It's Blue Sweater 1984. Elena smiled. Sentimental. I like that. She nodded to Marco. Verify it. Marco typed into the tablet. A moment later, a green light flashed on the screen. We are in. The funds are moving. Good, Elena said. She looked down at Silas. You did the right thing for your family, Silas. You saved your sister. Thank you, Nonna. He wept. Thank you. But, Elena continued, leveling the pistol at his forehead. You forgot the rule of this family. Betrayal is a cancer, and you have to cut it out before it spreads. Pfft. The single shot was barely louder than a book closing. Silas slumped back against the concrete. Elena engaged the safety and slipped the gun back into her purse, right next to her rosary beads. She looked at the blood spreading on the floor and sighed. Tiny, clean this up. It stains the concrete. And someone bring me a glass of water. My throat is dry. She walked back to the head of the table and sat down, picking up her knitting needles. Her hands were steady. The row of red wool grew, loop by loop. Marco, she called out without looking up. The feds used this boy. That means they are getting desperate. They are trying to turn our own blood against us. We need to blind them. How, Nonna? Marco asked, still staring at Silas's body. The district attorney who signed the warrant for Silas's sister, Elena said, counting her stitches. Send him a gift basket. Put a bottle of that vintage wine in it, the one we injected with the special blend. He will have a heart attack in his sleep. A tragedy. Stress of the job. And the sister? Marco asked. Maria? Elena paused. She looked at the crucifix hanging on the wall. I gave my word, she said sternly. Get her the lawyer. Get her out of jail. Then give her $50,000 and a plane ticket to Italy. Tell her Silas had to leave the country for work and he wants her to join him eventually. She is innocent. We do not kill civilians unless we have to. She looked around the room. The men were staring at her with a mixture of terror and awe. Well? She barked, sounding exactly like a grandmother scolding children who hadn't finished their vegetables. The money will not count itself. Back to work. And someone turn up the heat. It is drafty in here. As the hum of business resumed, the counting of cash, the tapping of keyboards, Elena's phone buzzed again. Another text. She frowned. Silas was dead. The traitor was gone. Who was texting her now? She opened the flip phone. The message was from an unknown number. You killed the wrong one. Elena stared at the screen. For the first time in 20 years, her blood ran cold. She looked up slowly. Marco was busy with the accounts. Tiny was dragging the body away. Dante was counting money. She had missed something. Or someone was playing a game so deep she couldn't see the bottom. She picked up a knitting needle, testing its sharp point against her thumb, until a drop of blood appeared. Marco, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Don't unlock the doors yet. The twist is revealed. Silas might have been a leak, but he wasn't the main threat. The real mastermind is still watching. Who is the true puppet master pulling the strings of the organization? Give us your theory. Elena placed the knitting needle back into the ball of red yarn. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a sensation she hadn't felt since the racketeering trials of 1982. But her face remained a mask of benign senility. She adjusted her shawl. "Marco," she repeated, her voice steady. "The Wi-Fi in here. Cut it. Kill the signal." Marco looked up from the glowing screens of his laptop, his brow furrowed. "Nonna? We are in the middle of the wash cycle. If I sever the connection now, the 20 million from the frantic accounts will get stuck in the relay server in Cyprus. The IRS algorithms will flag it in 10 minutes. "Do as I say, darling," Eleanor cooed, though her eyes were hard as flint. "We can lose 20 million. We cannot lose the family. Cut it." Marco hesitated for a fraction of a second, a fatal mistake in most organizations, but Elena allowed him the grace of confusion. He typed a command. The hum of the servers died down. The room went digitally silent. "Tiny," Elena said, turning her attention to the behemoth of a man currently scrubbing Silas's blood off the concrete with industrial bleach. "Check everyone for wires. Again. Strip them if you have to. I don't care if they get cold." "Nonna, what is this?" Dante asked. He was the youngest of her lieutenants, dressed in a suit that cost more than most people's houses, smelling of expensive cologne and fear. "Silas is dead. We got the money. Silas was a distraction," Eleanor said, reaching into her oversized purse. She bypassed the pistol and pulled out a tin of butter cookies. She popped the lid and offered one to the empty air before taking a bite. "Someone in this room thinks I am old. Someone thinks my eyes are failing. Silas gave us the password because he was told to. He was the sacrifice pawn to make the king feel safe." She chewed slowly, savoring the sugar. "Now, which one of you handsome boys is texting me?" The room fell into a terrified silence. The only sound was the ventilation system humming and the wet slap of Tiny's mop. Nonna has cut the feed, trapping the traitor inside with her. But cutting the internet also paused the laundering process, leaving millions exposed to the feds. Was this the right move to secure the room? Or has she just cost the family a fortune? Comment your opinion. "Marco," Elena said, swallowing the cookie. "The shipment for the Eastern European separatists, the javelins and the modified drones. Where are they?" "Container ship, the St. Lucia," Marco said, his hands raised to show he wasn't holding a phone. "Docked in Newark, moving tonight at 3 a.m. under the guise of agricultural machinery." "Change it," Elena ordered. "Reroute to Baltimore. Call the union boss there. Tell him his mother's hip surgery is paid for. Fully private room. Best surgeon in the state. I want those crates off the manifest before the sun comes up." "But Nonna," Dante interrupted, stepping forward. "The buyers are waiting in Jersey. If we move the product, we delay the delivery by 48 hours. The general will be furious. He might go to the cartels instead." Elena looked at Dante. She admired his ambition, but ambition was like garlic. Too much of it ruined the sauce. "Let him go to the cartels," Elena said dismissively. "The cartels sell drugs and messy violence. We sell regime change. We sell precision. If the general wants to win his war, he will wait 2 days. If he complains, tell him I will double the price for the inconvenience of listening to his whining." She stood up, leaning heavily on her cane, and walked toward Dante. She reached up and straightened his silk tie. "You look handsome today, Dante. Is that a new suit?" "Yes, Nonna." "Italian silk?" "Yes, Nonna." "Beautiful. Shame it fits you so poorly around the shoulders. You need to eat more. You look like a skeleton." She patted his cheek, her hand lingering near his throat. "Tell me, Dante, how did you know the general would be furious? I only spoke to him on the secure line yesterday. Marco was in the room. You were not." Dante froze. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking even more like the skeleton Elena had compared him to. I assumed," Dante stammered. "High stakes. Military buyers. They are always impatient." Elena smiled, a sweet grandmotherly expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Assumptions are dangerous, carissimo. They get people killed." She turned back to the table. "Tiny, come here. Bring the bucket." The giant man lumbered over, the smell of bleach pungent on him. "Dante needs a bath," Elena said casually. "He is sweating profusely. It is ruining that expensive silk. Dante has slipped up, but is it proof of treason or just nervous incompetence? If you were in Elena's shoes, would you order the hit immediately or interrogate him further to find the root of the rot? Make your call below." Before Tiny could reach for Dante, a loud, jarring ringtone echoed through the concrete bunker. It wasn't a cell phone. It was the red landline on the desk, the emergency line, the one that only rang when the world was ending. Eleanor held up a hand. Tiny froze. Dante took a shaking breath. Eleanor walked over to the desk. She picked up the receiver. "Speak." "Mrs. Moretti." A smooth, cultured voice came through the line. It was Senator Caldwell. "We have a problem with the appropriations bill, the one that hides your logistics funding within the infrastructure budget. The committee is stalling." "Senator," Eleanor said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the frail tremor. "I did not buy you a seat in the Senate so you could tell me about traffic jams. I bought you so you would pave the road." "It's not that simple, Elena. There's a new auditor, a young guy, very eager. He's asking questions about the concrete contracts in Nevada, the ones connected to the graveyards." Eleanor sighed. She looked at her knitting on the table. "Everyone wants to be a hero until they see the price of a cape. Send me his name, and his address, and the name of the school his children attend." "Elena, please. No violence on this one. It draws too much heat." "Senator, I am an old woman. I bake cookies. I do not commit violence." She lied smoothly. "I will simply send him a fruit basket. Maybe have a conversation about the rising cost of private education. I am sure he will see reason." She hung up the phone without saying goodbye. "Marco," she snapped. "Turn the internet back on. We have a name to find. The senator is useless, as always. Men in suits are so fragile." As the systems hummed back to life, Elena looked at Dante, who was still trembling near the wall. She hadn't forgotten him, but the text message was still burning in her mind. "You killed the wrong one." If Dante was the leak, he wouldn't be standing there sweating. He would have made a move when the phone rang. He was weak, not treacherous. "Dante," she said, "stop shaking. It annoys me. Go to the kitchen and make me a cup of tea, chamomile, and put a drop of brandy in it. My nerves are shot." Dante nodded frantically and rushed out of the reinforced door toward the kitchenette down the hall. Eleanor watched him go. Then she looked at Marco. "Check Dante's financials," she whispered. "If he has received so much as a $10 Venmo from someone we don't know, tell Tiny to make sure he slips in the shower." "And the text, Nonna?" Marco asked, typing furiously. "The one who said we killed the wrong one?" Eleanor sat back down and picked up her knitting. "That was not Dante. That was not Silas. That was someone who isn't afraid of me." She looked at the security monitors. The camera feed from the external perimeter flickered. Once. Twice. "Tiny," she said softly. "Get the shotgun. The one with the incendiary rounds." "Company," Tiny grunted. Worse, Elena said, counting her stitches. Family. The perimeter is breached. Is it a rival cartel coming for the territory? Or has a long-lost relative returned to claim the throne? The next 5 minutes will decide the fate of the Empire. Tell us who you think is at the door. The heavy steel doors of the bunker shook. A dull thud reverberated through the floor. They are bypassing the electronic locks, Marco said, his voice rising in panic. They have override codes. Nonna, only 3 people have those codes. Me, you, and my son. Elena finished, her eyes misting over, not with tears but with rage. Who has been dead for 15 years? The door hissed. The hydraulic seals disengaged. Elena didn't stand. She didn't reach for her gun. She simply continued to knit, the red wool flowing through her gnarled fingers like an artery, unspooling. She looked like a sweet great-grandmother waiting for her family to come home for Sunday dinner, except Sunday dinner was going to be served cold, and the main course was going to be revenge. "Put the kettle on, Tiny," she said, her voice cutting through the mechanical groan of the opening door. "We are going to have guests." The hydraulic hiss died down, replaced by the heavy thud of military-grade boots on concrete. The man who stepped through the haze of the depressurization chamber was not Santino. Santino had been broad, a bull of a man who laughed with his belly. This man was a blade, tall, lean, wearing a suit that cost more than the average American home, tailored to hide the bulge of a shoulder holster. But the eyes were the same. Dark, wet olives, swimming in a pool of arrogance. Tiny racked the slide of the shotgun. The sound was loud, violent, and utterly ignored by the intruder. "Put it down, Tiny," Elena said, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "If he wanted us dead, he would have vented the oxygen scrubbers 10 minutes ago. He wants to talk. And look, he didn't even wipe his feet." The man smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach those familiar eyes. "Hello, Nonna. It has been a long time. Not since the christening, I believe." "Enzo," Elena said, placing her knitting needles down on the table with a deliberate click. "Santino's boy, the one his mother whisked away to Zurich while the dirt was still fresh on your father's grave. You look thin. Do they not have pasta in Switzerland?" "They have banks, Nonna, and encryption keys, and leverage." Enzo walked further into the room, his eyes scanning the monitors, the servers, and finally resting on the terrified Dante, who had returned with the tea, the cup rattling against the saucer. "I see you're still running things the old way. Analog. Messy. The old way built the roof over your head." Elena countered sharply. "And it paid for that suit. Now, explain why you used a dead man's code to enter my sanctuary, or I will have Tiny show you how messy we can get." Enzo picked up an apple from the fruit bowl, inspected it, and took a bite. "The codes were my inheritance, just like the business is supposed to be. I hear you're having trouble with the appropriations bill. Senator Caldwell is getting cold feet?" Elena's eyes narrowed. "You have been listening." "I have been monitoring," Enzo corrected. "The senator is a liability. He's talking to the auditor, and the auditor is talking to the FBI. They aren't looking at the concrete in Nevada anymore. Nonna. They're looking at the shipping containers in Newark, the ones marked as medical supplies." Elena felt a cold spike in her chest. The Newark shipment wasn't concrete or cash. It was guidance chips for surface-to-air missiles, destined for a buyer in Sudan. If the feds opened those crates, it wasn't just prison. It was treason charges. It was the electric chair. "Who told you about Newark?" she asked, her voice turning to ice. "I own the logistics company you used to shell the operation." Enzo said casually. I bought it 6 months ago through a holding company in Singapore. You've been paying me to smuggle your own weapons, and you didn't even know it. The room went silent. Marco stopped typing. Tiny shifted his weight. This was a coup. A corporate takeover by her own blood. Elena stood up. She was 4 feet and 11 inches of osteoporosis and rage. She walked around the desk, her cane tapping a slow, rhythmic beat on the floor. She approached Enzo, who towered over her. She reached up, her hand trembling slightly, and patted his cheek. You think you are clever, she whispered. You think because you can move numbers on a screen, you understand power. You bought a company? Good for you. I bought the union that loads the ships. I bought the harbor master who inspects the seals. And I bought the judge who signs the warrants. She slapped him. It wasn't hard, but the sound cracked like a whip in the bunker. You are a child playing with matches in a gas station, she hissed. The Newark shipment is a decoy. The real merchandise went out through Charleston 3 days ago. If the feds open the Newark containers, they will find 20 tons of expired baby formula. Enzo's smile faltered. For the first time, he looked unsure. You baited the feds? I fed them, Elena corrected, walking back to her chair. I gave them a bone to chew on so they wouldn't notice the steak being carried out the back door. Now sit down. Dante, give the boy some tea. He looks like he's about to faint. We have a family standoff. Do you embrace the prodigal grandson and use his tech skills? Or do you view his ambition as a lethal threat that needs to be neutralized immediately? Tell us if Enzo survives the hour. Enzo sat. He looked at the tea Dante placed before him, then back at his grandmother. The power dynamic had shifted, but the threat remained. He knew too much. If you knew about the investigation, Enzo said, his voice lower, more respectful. Then you know about the leak, the text message you received. You killed the wrong one. Elena took a sip of her own tea. The brandy burned pleasantly in her throat. I know. It wasn't a threat from a rival, Enzo said. It was a warning. From inside, someone in this room, or someone very close to it, is selling the roster of the cleaners to the DEA. Elena looked at Marco, then at Tiny, then at Dante. The cleaners were her elite hit squad, faceless men and women who handled the problems that could not be solved with bribes. If that list got out, 30 years of unsolved murders would be solved in an afternoon. And you know who it is? Elena asked. I have a name, Enzo said, but it will cost you. I am not paying you for information that saves your own life. Elena snapped. You are in the game now, Enzo. If I go down, you go down. The feds don't care that you wear nice suits. They will put you in a cage with the animals just the same. Enzo leaned forward. I don't want money. I want the seat. I want to be the underboss. Officially. I want the North American distribution rights for the new synthetic opioid coming out of the labs in Prague. Greed, Elena mused, picking up her knitting again. It killed your father. He wanted to import cars and cocaine in the same shipment. He got sloppy. I am not my father. No, Elena agreed. He had a warmer smile. She looked at the security monitors. The world outside was moving on. People were going to work, buying coffee, living their innocent little lives, completely unaware that a grandmother in a bunker was deciding whether to flood their streets with a drug 10 times more potent than heroin. The auditor, Elena said suddenly. The one bothering Senator Caldwell. Let's see how useful you are. If you handle him, we can discuss Prague. Enzo raised an eyebrow. Handle him how? The fruit basket approach? He is young. Elena said, recalling the senator's words. Eager. That means he has vices he hasn't learned to hide yet. Gambling, women, men. Find the weakness, exploit it. If he cannot be bought, he must be ruined. If he cannot be ruined. She paused to count a stitch. Then he must have an accident. But it must look like bad luck, not a hit, a gas leak, a car malfunction. Can you do this without leaving a digital footprint? Enzo scoffed. I can delete his existence from the IRS database before he finishes his morning coffee. I can plant evidence on his hard drive that will have him serving 20 years for embezzlement. Good, Elena said. Do it. Destroy his reputation first. Death is too quick for people who annoy me. I want him to lose his job, his house, and his wife before he loses his life. And the name of the rat? Enzo asked. Earn the seat first, Elena said. Then you give me the name. This is a test of competence versus cruelty. Would you choose the path of digital destruction to ruin the auditor's life, or simply order the hit to ensure silence? The method defines the Mafia. Cast your vote on the strategy. Suddenly, the red phone on the desk, the secure line to the distribution hubs, began to flash. Not ring, flash. That meant a catastrophic failure in the supply chain. Marco jumped to the console. Nonna, we have a situation in Miami. The warehouse. It's on fire. Elena didn't look up from her knitting. Which one? The holding facility for the cash reserves, Marco said, his face pale. $80 million in small bills. It's burning. Enzo stood up, checking his phone. It's not on the news yet. How do you know? Sensors, Marco said. Temperatures just spiked to 2,000 degrees. Elena closed her eyes. 80 million. It was a lot of money, even for her. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the message. Burning cash was an insult. It was someone saying, we don't need your money. We want your blood. The text message, Elena whispered. You killed the wrong one. She looked at Enzo. Did you do this? To prove you are needed? I'm not insane, Enzo said, looking genuinely rattled. That's my inheritance burning too. Then we have a war, Elena said, her voice hardening into steel. Tiny, put the shotgun away. Get the heavy equipment. The cartel from the south has been pushing for Florida. They think because I am old, I will not fight back. She stood up, leaning heavily on her cane, transforming from the fragile grandmother into the warlord. Marco, liquidate the assets in the Cayman accounts. Move everything to the crypto wallets Enzo set up. Enzo, you say you can destroy a man digitally? Prove it. Find the accounts funding the Mexican cartel's operation in Miami and freeze them. Starve them. And you, Nonna? Enzo asked. What will you do? Elena walked to the kitchenette. She opened a high cupboard and pulled out a tin of butter cookies. Behind the tin was a black box. She opened it to reveal a gold-plated satellite phone and a small glass vial of clear liquid. I am going to make a call to the governor of Florida, she said sweetly. I baked cookies for his fundraiser last year. I think it is time he returns the favor. I need the National Guard deployed to secure the port against drug traffickers. If my warehouse burns, no one else moves a single kilo until I say so. She turned to her boys, the brute, the hacker, the coward, and the prodigal grandson. They want to burn my money? Elena smiled, and it was a terrifying thing to witness. I will burn their city. Tiny, bring the car around. We are going to church. I need to light a candle for the souls of the men we are about to kill. War has been declared on U.S. soil. The next move involves absolute chaos. Do we escalate with a military-grade response? or use political corruption to crush the rivals quietly. The fate of the Empire rests on your choice. The armored Cadillac Escalade idled at the curb, its engine a low, predatory hum that vibrated through the soles of Marco's Italian loafers. Tiny held the back door open, his massive frame blocking the streetlight, casting a shadow that swallowed the sidewalk. Elena emerged from the building, a silk scarf tied under her chin, and a heavy wool coat buttoned to her throat to ward off the chill. She looked for all the world like a woman on her way to bingo, clutching a leather handbag that contained a rosary, a roll of peppermint hard candies, and a loaded .22 caliber pistol with the serial number filed off. Inside the plush leather interior of the car, the air smelled of lemon polish and stale fear. Enzo was already typing furiously on a laptop balanced on his knees, the screen's blue light reflecting in his glasses. Marco poured a glass of water from the center console's crystal decanter, his hands shaking just enough to make the ice click against the glass. "Governor Davidson picks up on the second ring," Elena said, her voice soft, devoid of the rage that had consumed the room moments ago. She held the gold satellite phone to her ear. "Robert, dear. It is Elena. I apologize for calling so late, but I was just looking at the photos from your daughter's wedding. Such a beautiful ceremony. The arrangement I sent. Lilies, weren't they? Yes." She paused, listening to the stammering on the other end. Her eyes, however, were fixed on Enzo. She watched his fingers fly across the keyboard. Was he tracing the cartel or warning them? "Robert, I have a concern," Elena continued, picking a piece of lint off her coat. "There is a terrible fire in Miami, a warehouse. It seems criminal elements are out of control. As a concerned citizen and a major donor to your re-election campaign, I feel unsafe. I think it is time you declare a state of emergency in the Port District. Deploy the National Guard. Inspect every container coming from the south, every single one, indefinitely." She listened for a moment, her expression tightening. "Bureaucracy is such a ugly word, Robert. Do you know what else is ugly? The offshore accounts in your wife's maiden name that received $3 million last quarter. I would hate for the IRS to stumble upon those records. Enzo is very good at finding things people lose. Do we understand each other?" "Good. Sleep well, Governor." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her bag. The port is closed. The cartel's supply line is severed. Now they suffocate. Political blackmail is a dangerous game. Did Elena push the governor too far, creating a new enemy? Or was this the only way to halt the cartel's advance? The consequences of squeezing a politician often come back to bite. Tell us if you would have threatened him or bribed him. The car glided through the city streets, heading toward the old cathedral in the district that gentrification had forgotten. This was neutral ground, or at least it was supposed to be. "Enzo," Elena said, unwrapping a peppermint. "Status: I've frozen 4 shell companies linked to the Sinaloa operations in Florida," Enzo said, not looking up. "They can't buy gas for their trucks, let alone pay their soldiers. But Nonna, the fire. The sensors indicate an accelerant was used on the inside. Someone bypassed the biometrics." "Inside job," Marco whispered. "It has to be." "Obviously," Elena snapped. "The question is not if, but who and why. $80 million is a retirement fund for a king, not a pawn. Whoever betrayed us has ambitions to replace us." The car stopped in front of the cathedral. The massive Gothic structure loomed against the night sky, its stone gargoyles staring down in silent judgment. Tiny opened the door, and Elena stepped out, the tip of her cane clicking against the pavement. Inside, the church was dim, lit only by racks of flickering votive candles. The scent of frankincense and old wood hung heavy in the air. Elena walked slowly down the center aisle, her grandsons flanking her like wolves guarding a matriarch. Near the altar, a man in a pristine charcoal suit stood waiting. He was not a priest. He was Julian Vane, the largest independent arms dealer on the East Coast. "Elena," Vane said, bowing his head slightly. "You look radiant. The years are kind to you." "Flattery costs extra, Julian," Elena said, stopping to dip her fingers in the holy water font, crossing herself with practiced reverence. "I need hardware. My boys in Miami are under-equipped for the war that is coming." "I heard about the warehouse," Vane said, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "Bad business. Cash is flammable. Gold is heavy. Information is weightless." Elena narrowed her eyes. "You have something for me?" "I have a shipment of military-grade drones arriving in Newark tonight," Vane said. "Thermal imaging, suppressed firing mechanisms. Perfect for urban sanitation. But the price has gone up. The cartel made a counteroffer." Tiny took a step forward, his knuckles cracking, but Elena raised a hand. "They offer you money," Elena said sweetly. "I offer you continued existence. You deal with the cartel, Julian, and you become a combatant. I do not bake cookies for combatants. I bury them." She reached into her bag, bypassing the pistol, and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. "Marco, write the check, full price, plus 10% for loyalty. Julian, if one of those drones ends up in Mexican hands, I will have Tiny dismantle you, piece by piece, starting with your toes." Vane swallowed hard, nodding. "The shipment is yours. Newark, Pier 14. Midnight." Negotiating with arms dealers requires a balance of wealth and terror. Should Elena have paid the premium to secure the weapons? Or had Tiny eliminate Vane to take the shipment by force? Every dollar spent is a dollar less for the war chest. Decide the fate of the deal. As Marco handed over the check, Elena walked to the side altar to light a candle. She struck a match, the flame illuminating her wrinkled face. She watched the wax melt, thinking of the 80 million turning to ash in Miami. "Nonna," Enzo said, stepping up beside her, his voice low. "I found something else. The biometric log at the Miami warehouse. The code used to enter the vault. It was authorized by a user with top-level clearance." Elena didn't turn. "Whose code, Enzo?" "It was an old code." Enzo hesitated. "One that hasn't been active for 5 years. It belonged to your son, my father." The match burned down to Elena's fingertips, but she didn't flinch. Her son had been dead for 5 years. A car accident. Or so they had told the world. "Impossible," she whispered. "The digital footprint is there," Enzo insisted. "Either someone hacked the legacy system or he is not as dead as we thought," Elena finished, blowing out the match. The smoke curled up toward the vaulted ceiling. The betrayal was not just about money. It was about blood. If her son was alive and working against her, the war was not just business. It was a Greek tragedy. She turned to her grandsons. Marco looked like he was about to vomit. Tiny was scanning the shadows of the church, hand on his weapon. Enzo looked vindicated, his technical prowess having uncovered the ghost. "We go to Newark," Elena said, her voice turning into gravel. "We take the weapons. Then we go to the safe house in the Hamptons. I need to think. And Tiny, if anyone approaches the car, anyone at all, you shoot them in the face. I am done being a sweet old lady for the night." "What about the rat?" Marco asked. If it's him?" If it is my son, Elena said, clutching her rosary so tight the beads cut into her palm. Then I will remind him why I am the head of this table. A mother's love is unconditional, Marco. Her patience is not. They moved toward the exit, the sound of their footsteps heavy on the stone floor. But as they reached the heavy oak doors, the red laser dot appeared on Tiny's chest. "Down!" Elena screamed, dropping to the floor with a speed that defied her age. Glass shattered as a high-powered round blew through the wood, taking a chunk out of the pew where Elena had been standing a second before. The echo of the gunshot was deafening. Tiny tackled Elena, shielding her body with his bulk. "Snipers! Upper balcony! Enzo, kill the lights!" Elena barked from beneath the mountain of muscle. "Marco, return fire!" This was not a warning. This was an assassination attempt. In the house of God. The rules of engagement had been discarded. The cartel, or the ghost of her son, had decided that tonight the grandmother would die. They are pinned down in the cathedral with snipers in the rafters. The next few seconds determine survival. Does the team attempt to break for the armored car under suppressive fire, or hunt the snipers in the dark catacombs of the church? The choice is between flight and fight. The cathedral plunged into darkness as Enzo cut the breakers, leaving only the moonlight filtering through the shattered stained glass to illuminate the swirling dust and gun smoke. Muzzle flashes erupted from the upper balcony like strobe lights in a nightmare, sending a hail of bullets chipping away at the marble altar where the family took cover. "They have night vision!" Marco screamed, firing blindly over the pew with his Glock. "We're sitting ducks, Nonna!" Elena pushed Tiny's massive arm off her shoulder and adjusted her shawl. The fear had evaporated, replaced by a cold, reptilian fury. This was her sanctuary. She had paid for the roof, the pews, and the gold leaf on the saints. To desecrate it was an insult not just to God, but to her checkbook. "Marco, stop whining," Elena snapped, reaching into her oversized designer handbag. She pushed aside a container of freshly baked biscotti and a bag of knitting wool to wrap her fingers around cold steel. She pulled out a modified, gold-plated submachine gun, a relic from the cartel wars of the 80s. "Enzo, the side exit. Is it clear?" "I can't tell. The sensors are jammed," Enzo yelled over the roar of automatic fire. A grenade tumbled from the balcony, clattering on the stone floor 20 feet away. "Move!" Tiny roared, dragging Elena and the boys toward the heavy stone pillars of the nave, just as the explosion rocked the foundation. The shockwave blew out the remaining windows, raining colorful shards of glass, down like deadly confetti. The ringing in Elena's ears was deafening, but her mind was crystal clear. This was a flanking maneuver. It was precise. It was military. It was exactly how she had taught her son to clear a room. Who will survive this night? Type loyalty, if you stand with Grandma. "They are coming down the spiral stairs," Elena said, her voice cutting through the ringing. She racked the slide of her weapon with a terrifying familiarity. "Marco, suppress the balcony. Tiny, take the stairs. Enzo, get the car started. I will cover the rear." "Nonna, you can't." Enzo started. Elena turned the weapon on him for a fraction of a second, her eyes hard as diamonds. "Do not tell me what I can and cannot do, child. I was killing federales while you were still a concept in your father's mind. Go!" Enzo scrambled toward the side door. Tiny unleashed a roar, firing his assault rifle toward the stairwell, shredding the wooden banister, and dropping two dark-clad figures who tumbled to the floor. Marco stood his ground, trading fire with the snipers above. Elena moved with a grace that belied her 80 years, using the shadows of the confessionals for cover. She saw movement near the main entrance, a breach team preparing to storm through the debris. She didn't hesitate. She stepped out from the shadows, leveled the gold-plated gun, and squeezed the trigger. The weapon bucked in her frail hands, spitting fire. 3 men fell before they even realized the old woman in the black dress was the threat. "Reloading!" she shouted, dropping the magazine and slapping in a fresh one with practiced ease. "Tiny, toss me the incendiary." Tiny, pinned down by heavy fire, pulled a red canister from his tactical vest and rolled it across the floor. Elena caught it with her foot, stooped, pulled the pin, and hurled it toward the main doors. "Close your eyes," she commanded. The grenade detonated, filling the entrance with blinding white phosphorus and screaming flames. The screams of the hit squad mingled with the crackle of fire. "The side door is open!" Enzo's voice crackled over their earpieces. "The armored SUV is waiting." They moved as a unit, retreating under the cover of the smoke. But as they burst out into the cool night air of the alleyway, a lone figure stood blocking their path. He was wearing a tactical mask, holding a detonator. Elena froze. The stance, the tilt of the head, even behind the mask, a mother knows her creation. "Drop it," the man said. The voice was distorted, but the cadence was familiar. "You should have stayed dead," Elena said, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a heartbreak that was rapidly hardening into concrete. "You broke my heart, mio figlio. Now you try to break my empire?" "The empire was mine by birthright," the man growled. "You're just keeping the seat warm." "The seat," Elena said, raising her weapon, "is made of iron and blood, and you are too soft to sit in it." The man's thumb hovered over the detonator. The alley was rigged. If he pressed it, the walls would collapse on all of them. It was a standoff between a ghost and a matriarch. Who will survive this night? Type loyalty, if you stand with Grandma. "Do it," Elena challenged, stepping forward, the muzzle of her gun aimed at his heart. "Blow us all to hell. Show me you have the conviction. Show me I didn't raise a coward." The man hesitated. That split second was all the opening Tiny needed. The giant bodyguard lunged, not at the man, but at Elena, throwing her into the open back door of the armored SUV, just as Marco opened fire. The bullet struck the man in the chest, his finger spasming on the trigger. "Go, go, go!" Elena screamed as the alley erupted. The blast was cataclysmic. Bricks and mortar rained down on the roof of the armored vehicle as Enzo slammed the accelerator, tires screeching on the pavement. The shockwave shattered the rear window, showering the leather interior with glass. Elena clawed her way up from the floorboards, looking out the back. The alley was a tomb of rubble and fire. "Did we get him?" Marco asked, breathless, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. Was it really Dad?" Elena straightened her dress, brushing dust from her lap. She ejected the magazine from her weapon and placed it back in her purse, right next to her prayer book. Her face was a mask of stone, devoid of the tears that threatened to drown her. "It does not matter who it was," Elena whispered, staring at the burning city skyline receding in the distance. "Tonight, we go to the Hamptons. Tomorrow we mobilize the New York families. If my son is alive, he has declared war on his mother." She looked at her grandsons, her eyes burning with a terrifying resolve. "And in this family, we do not ground disobedient children. We bury them." The armored SUV smoked as it screeched through the wrought iron gates of the Hamptons estate. This was not a vacation home. It was a fortress disguised as a sprawling Victorian manor, sitting on 3 acres of manicured lawn that concealed landmines and motion sensors. But as they approached the main house, Elena saw the bodies of her gatekeepers sprawled across the gravel driveway. "They beat us here!" Enzo shouted, swerving the vehicle as a rocket-propelled grenade streaked from the meticulously pruned rose garden, The projectile slammed into the front grille, flipping the heavy SUV onto its side. Metal screamed against stone as the vehicle slid, crashing through the front veranda and coming to a halt in a cloud of dust and plaster. Elena hung suspended by her seatbelt. Her pearl necklace had snapped, scattering white beads across the shattered dashboard like hail. She did not scream. She simply reached into her purse, retrieved a pair of small sewing scissors, and cut the belt. She dropped to the ceiling of the overturned car with a grunt, her knees cracking. "Nonna!" Marco cried out, kicking open the warped rear door. "We have to move. They are swarming the lawn." Elena crawled out of the wreckage, her silk dress torn, her silver hair unpinning in the wind. She looked at the rose garden, now teeming with men in black tactical gear. "My roses," Elena said, her voice dropping to a register that made the blood in Marco's veins turn to ice. "They are trampling my prize-winning roses." "Nonna, forget the roses! It's a kill team!" Tiny roared, firing his submachine gun blindly over the hood of the wrecked SUV to suppress the advancing enemy. "I forget nothing," Elena snapped. She dusted off her skirt and walked calmly toward the shattered front doors of the manor, ignoring the bullets chipping the masonry around her head. Inside, now. If we are to die, we will not do it on the porch like stray dogs. They breached the foyer. The house was silent, dark, and cold. The staff was gone, fled or dead. Elena moved directly to the grand staircase, but not to go up. She went to the antique grandfather clock standing sentinel in the hall. She opened the glass face and turned the hands to midnight. A heavy mechanical clank echoed through the floorboards. The oak paneling beneath the stairs slid open, revealing a rack of military-grade hardware that would make a warlord blush. "Enzo, take the perimeter cameras. Marco, get the heavy plating for the windows." Elena ordered, her frailty vanishing. She lifted a customized, gold-plated automatic shotgun from the rack, checking the chamber with the practiced ease of a woman who had outlived 3 husbands and 6 district attorneys. "And Tiny, put the kettle on. I need tea. Earl Grey. Hot." "Tea?" Tiny asked, reloading his pistol. "Nonna, there is a helicopter inbound." "I said tea!" Elena barked, racking the shotgun slide. "Civilization does not end just because we're under siege." "Who will survive this night? Type loyalty, if you stand with Grandma." A deafening roar shook the chandeliers as a black assault helicopter rose over the tree line, its floodlight blinding them through the shattered windows. A heavy machine gun mounted on the chopper's side spun to life. "Get down!" Marco screamed, tackling Elena behind the heavy marble kitchen island. Thousands of rounds tore through the manor. The fine china cabinet exploded in a shower of porcelain shards. The expensive French windows shattered inward. Plaster rained down like snow. The noise was apocalyptic, a continuous thunder of destruction designed to erase the Ricci family from the face of the earth. When the firing paused for the gunner to reload, Elena stood up. She brushed a shard of a teacup from her shoulder. "That was my wedding china," she whispered. She looked at the kitchen counter. The kettle was riddled with holes. "And now I cannot have my tea." She turned to the pantry door. "Marco, open the reserve." Marco hesitated, then pulled the handle. Inside the pantry, amidst shelves of pasta sauce and olive oil, sat a control console wired into the estate's foundation. "The betrayal runs deep," Elena said, her eyes scanning the security monitors that flickered in the pantry. "They have the codes. They have the layout. But they forgot one thing." "What's that, Nonna?" Enzo asked, ducking as a sniper round pinged off the refrigerator. "They forgot that I am the one who buried the bodies under the gazebo," Elena said. She punched a code into the console. 1945. Outside, the manicured lawn erupted. The garden gnomes, the stone fountains, and the decorative pillars along the driveway detonated in unison. The explosions were directional, shaped charges filled with ball bearings. The shockwave buckled the knees of the tactical team advancing on the house. The helicopter, caught in the updraft of the sudden thermal bloom, pitched violently sideways. "Now!" Elena commanded. "To the library!" They moved through the smoke-filled hallway. The enemy was breaching the side entrance. Glass crunched under Elena's orthopedic shoes. As they entered the library, 3 men in gas masks burst through the French doors, weapons raised. Tiny took 2 rounds to his Kevlar vest and went down, wheezing. Marco jammed his gun. Elena did not flinch. She raised the gold-plated shotgun and fired. The first blast took the lead man in the chest, lifting him off his feet and throwing him back through the doors. She pumped the action. Click, clack. The second blast removed the arm of the second attacker. The third man hesitated, terrified by the sight of this grandmotherly figure dispensing death with rhythmic precision. "You didn't wipe your feet!" Elena scolded before delivering the final shot. She walked over to Tiny, who was gasping for air on the rug. She knelt, checking his vest. "Bruised ribs. You will live. Stop crying. You are embarrassing me." "Nonna," Enzo called from the window. "The helicopter is stabilizing. They are preparing a missile strike. They aren't trying to capture us anymore. They want to level the house." Elena walked to the massive mahogany desk at the end of the room. She opened the top drawer, pushing aside knitting needles and a half-finished scarf to reveal a red telephone and a single heavy toggle switch. "They want total war?" Elena said, her hand hovering over the switch. "They think they can take my crown? I built this country's underworld before their fathers were born. Nonna, if you flip that, you activate the Samson Protocol," Marco warned, his face pale. "The EMP will black out the entire eastern seaboard. Wall Street, the hospitals, the grid. The FBI will know exactly where we are." "Let them come," Elena hissed, her eyes hard as diamonds. "Let them all come. If I burn, the world burns with me. Who will survive this night? Type loyalty. If you stand with Grandma." The helicopter lined up its shot. The pilot's finger tightened on the trigger. Elena flipped the switch. A low hum vibrated through the floor, followed by a pulse of invisible energy that exploded outward from the estate's hidden generator. The lights in the manor died instantly. Outside, the helicopter's avionics fried. The machine seized, its rotors stalling mid-spin. It dropped like a stone, crashing into the burning remains of the rose garden in a massive fireball. Silence descended on the Hamptons, heavy and suffocating. The entire coastline had gone dark. Elena stood in the moonlight filtering through the broken library windows. She placed the shotgun on the desk and picked up her knitting needles. "Enzo," she said calmly in the dark, "go to the wine cellar. Bring me the vintage Chianti, the 1947. "And the war, Nonna?" Marco asked, looking at the burning wreckage on the lawn. "What do we do now?" Elena sat in her high-backed leather chair, the shadows hiding her face, leaving only her hands visible as she began to knit. "Now?" Elena said softly. "Now we call the cartels. We call the Russians. We call the Triad. Tell them the seat is not empty. Tell them the grandmother is awake." She paused, looking at the blood on her dress. "And tell them to bring bleach. I have a lot of cleaning to do." The vintage Chianti breathed in the glass, a stark contrast to the smell of ozone and burning aviation fuel drifting in from the lawn. Elena held the crystal stemware with a steady hand, staring into the darkness of the library. The blackout was absolute. The entire eastern seaboard was blind. But in the shadows of the Hamptons estate, 40 mercenaries were moving with the confidence of men who did not need electricity to kill. "Enzo," Elena whispered, her voice cutting through the silence like a razor through silk. "Do not spill the wine. It is older than you and has significantly more character." Enzo trembled as he poured, the bottle clinking softly against the rim. "Nonna, the perimeter sensors are dead. The cameras are dead. We are blind." "We are not blind," Elena corrected, taking a sip. "We are simply playing in the dark. I prefer the dark. It hides the stains." Glass shattered in the foyer. Not a single pane, but a coordinated breach of all 6 ground floor entry points simultaneously. The sound of heavy boots crunching over the marble floors echoed up the grand staircase. These were not common thugs. They moved with the discipline of elite tactical units. "FBI hostage rescue team," Marco hissed, pressing his back against the mahogany bookshelf, racking the slide of his pistol. "Working with the Sinaloa cartel. Only they would have the manpower to storm the estate during a blackout." "Sinaloa," Elena mused, setting her wine down on a doily. "I remember when the head of that family was a skinny boy stealing hubcaps in Culiacan. I sent him his first suit. I paid for his daughter's quinceañera." She reached into her knitting basket, pushing aside a ball of baby blue yarn to grasp the cold steel of a modified submachine gun. "It seems he has forgotten his manners." A laser sight, powered by a shielded battery, cut a red line through the dusty air of the library, landing squarely on Elena's chest. "Federal agents!" a voice boomed from the hallway. "Surrender immediately!" Elena did not rise. She simply angled the submachine gun toward the heavy oak doors. "In this house!" she shouted back, her voice suddenly possessing the iron authority of a dictator. "We take our shoes off at the door." She pulled the trigger. The submachine gun roared, shredding the oak doors into splinters. Screams erupted from the hallway as the heavy caliber rounds chewed through Kevlar and flesh. The recoil shook Elena's frail frame, but she leaned into it, her expression one of mild irritation, as if she were scrubbing a stubborn stain from a tablecloth. "Who will survive this night? Type? Loyalty, if you stand with Grandma." The doors kicked open. Flashlights mounted on rifles sliced through the gloom. Marco and Tiny opened fire, creating a crossfire that dropped the first 3 agents. But the wave was relentless. Tear gas canisters clattered across the floor, hissing white smoke. Elena coughed, waving a lace handkerchief in front of her face. "Rude," she muttered. She reached under the massive desk and pulled a hidden lever. The floor in the center of the library retracted. A heavy antique grandfather clock against the wall swung open, revealing not a pendulum, but the belt-fed mechanism of a mounted heavy machine gun. "Tiny, the clock!" Elena commanded. Tiny, disregarding his bruised ribs, dove for the weapon. He spun the barrel, unleashing a torrent of lead that soared through the wall, turning the attackers in the hallway into mist. The noise was deafening, a symphony of destruction that shook the crystal chandelier until it crashed to the floor. Suddenly, a figure stepped through the smoke, flanked by 2 heavy enforcers wearing gas masks. It was not an FBI agent. It was a man in a bespoke suit, holding a suppressed pistol. "Hola, Madrina," the man said, stepping over the body of a Fed. It was El Lobo, the head of the Sinaloa cartel. "Time to retire. The nursing home is waiting." Elena stopped knitting. She looked at the man she had once treated like a grandson. The betrayal did not break her heart. It calcified it. "Hector," she said, using his real name. "You look terrible. You haven't been eating enough." "I eat fine," El Lobo sneered, raising his gun. "I am eating your territory. The Russians, the Triads, they all back me. You are old, Elena. You represent the past. Tonight, we bury the past." "You backed the wrong horse, Hector." Elena said, her hand drifting to the pearl necklace around her throat. "And you forgot the first rule of this family." "And what is that?" "Never accept cookies from someone you tried to kill." El Lobo frowned. "I didn't eat your cookies." "No." Elena smiled, a sweet, terrifying expression. "But your men in the hallway are breathing the air. And this house? It is not just a house, it is a chimney." She yanked the pearl necklace. The string broke, but instead of pearls scattering, a hidden pin inside the clasp triggered the ventilation system's emergency purge. Vents in the ceiling slammed open, dropping not fresh air, but a heavy yellow powder. Mustard gas concentrate, synthesized in her private labs beneath the rose garden. El Lobo's eyes widened. He fired, the bullet striking the high-backed chair inches from Elena's ear. Marco tackled him, driving the cartel boss into the bookshelf. The room descended into chaotic hand-to-hand combat as the gas began to swirl. "Masks!" Elena ordered, pulling a vintage gas mask from her knitting bag and slipping it over her silver hair. She looked like a post-apocalyptic insect, the large glass eyes reflecting the muzzle flashes. "Who will survive this night? Type loyalty, if you stand with Grandma." Marco and El Lobo rolled on the floor, smashing into the antique globe. Tiny was wrestling two cartel enforcers near the fireplace, using a fire iron to bludgeon them with sickening crunches. Elena stood up. She walked through the melee, immune to the chaos. She approached the brawl between Marco and El Lobo. The cartel boss had the upper hand, his fingers digging into Marco's throat. Elena tapped El Lobo on the shoulder. He turned, gasping, his eyes burning from the gas. She held a knitting needle in her hand, not a standard needle, but one sharpened to a monofilament point, dipped in neurotoxin. "Hold still, dear," she said, muffled behind her mask. "This will only hurt for a second." She drove the needle into his neck with the precision of a surgeon. El Lobo stiffened, his eyes rolling back, foam bubbling at his mouth. He collapsed instantly. Elena looked down at him. "Bad posture," she critiqued. "Always had bad posture." She stepped over his twitching body and walked to the window. The sky outside was black, but the horizon was beginning to glow with the fires of the crashed helicopter and the chaos she had unleashed. "Enzo!" she called out through the mask. "Get the secure line, the one hardwired to the bunker." Enzo, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, crawled to the desk and handed her the heavy red handset. Elena dialed. She waited for the connection to click. "This is the matriarch," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Initiate the Scorched Earth Protocol. Liquidate the assets in Mexico City. Burn the warehouses in Moscow. And tell the president." She paused, watching the smoke fill her library. "Tell him if he sends another agency to my house, I will release the files on his mistress and the lithium mines." She hung up. The gas was clearing as the exhaust fans kicked in. Marco stood up, wheezing, looking at the carnage. Bodies of federal agents and cartel hitmen littered the floor of the billion-dollar room. "Nonna," Marco gasped. "We started a world war." Elena removed her gas mask, patting her hair back into place. She picked up her glass of Chianti, miraculously unbroken amidst the slaughter. "No, Marco," she said, taking a sip and savoring the vintage. "We just finished one. Now go fetch the mop. We have guests coming for brunch tomorrow, and I will not have blood on my Persian rugs." Dawn broke over the shattered skyline. Inside the penthouse, the silence was broken only by the rhythmic scrubbing of the cleanup crew. They moved like ghosts, dissolving the remains of the hitmen in industrial acid tubs. Elena sat in her velvet armchair, holding a fresh tray of biscotti, the smell of almond, masking the lingering scent of neurotoxin. "Marco," she said softly. "Come here, child." Marco, his suit ruined, approached the woman who had just orchestrated the collapse of 3 governments before breakfast. "Did the president call back?" she asked. "Yes, Nonna. He apologized. He asked if he could still come for Thanksgiving." Elena smiled. "Good. Tell him to bring the wine. I do not trust his taste in dessert." She pressed a heavy iron key into Marco's palm. "The Zurich accounts. $7 billion. Your allowance." Marco stared, weeping. "Nonna." "Hush!" She slapped his cheek. "Blood is the only currency that does not inflate. But remember, Marco, power is not a gun. Power is being the sweet old lady no one suspects until their throat closes. It is baking the bread and burning down the wheat field. Never let them see the wolf, only the grandmother." She smoothed her floral apron. "Now, wash your face. The guests are arriving and I made extra poison. I mean, pastries. If you are loyal to the grandma, comment La Familia and share this record.